is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I'm going to bring him up right away because he's going to do the lane analysis with me. We're just going to be, again, you guys, we're going to be talking about best practices, building that book of business, operations, all of that fun stuff. And anytime somebody, like I've said last week as well, anytime somebody from the Midwest wants to come on, you're always welcome. That Midwest Connect runs deep inside of transportation. And I want to welcome Mr. Chris Sonnek onto the load today. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be on the show.
No, dude, the Minneapolis connection too is uncanny. Like, I don't know if you knew this, but I was born and raised over in a little town called Osceola, Wisconsin. My entire family lives in the Twin Cities, and they all live up in White Bear Lake area. So.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Yep. Glad to represent Minnesota.
All right, man. Well, hey, so this is what we do. We do 3 times a week, we do a lane analysis. All right. It's powered by my friends over at DAT. It's called This Week in Freight. We're going to be breaking down a flatbed lane today. And let me pull it up. It's Spokane, Washington to Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm going to pull that up on the stream here. And so, you've been in the industry now for, you said like eight plus years. When you're going out there, what are some of those things that you look at when a customer comes to you for the first time with a new lane that you've never quoted before?
Yeah, when it comes to a brand new lane, kind of like you're looking at right now, I definitely like to look at the year prior just to see specific trends, right? Looking at the full screen from last summer to now, it looks like it's trended upwards just slightly. Not a surprise by any means in terms of where the industry's been trending recently. And specifically for, this Washington to Arizona, first, if it's going anywhere in Arizona besides Phoenix, it'd get a little dicey, right? Because there's not really a lot of open deck freight coming out of that area if you're not really central to Phoenix. And really something else that I don't see a ton of people talking about, every once in a while I see it, is actually on DAT. If you scroll down a little bit in the bottom right to kind of look at capacity in these markets as well, really understanding, do I truly know my carrier capacity, whether it's inbound or outbound? Because that's drastically going to affect how I price it out. If this is something I move often for a different customer, or I have a little bit of history on it, then that'll change how I quote it, versus if this is completely brand new and I don't necessarily have a full understanding of what carriers are going to be in this area looking to go down to Phoenix. So that would drastically change how I go about pricing.
Yeah, me personally, those are a lot of great points. I also, for a new lane, I always look at the inverse lane, right? So it's like, if I've never moved anything into Arizona, I want to see like, what are outbound Arizona rates looking like? Because again, that drastically affects what people are going to quote you coming down in there. Like you brought up good points. Phoenix, anything outside of Phoenix, Tucson, Kingman, it's pretty bleak for freight. Otherwise, there's some serious deadhead that comes along with it out of the Arizona market here. So it's like, I want to look into those things because, again, most customers don't necessarily, they might not care about the outbound market, but like a lot of people aren't really explaining a lot of the certain factors that come in to why rates are what they are, right? A lot of people just quote and say, this is it. Another big thing I always look at as well is the miles and the days in correlation to the days of the week that they want to ship it, right? Like if this is has to ship on Thursday to a Monday, exponentially going to be more expensive than a pick on Monday, pick on Tuesday style quote, right? Or it's a good weekend run. So like Friday to Monday, 1,400 miles, that's a great weekend run for a lot of guys out there. So again, those are those other factors that affect what carriers are going to quote you. And then again, looking for those stabilization markers on what you can deliver to your customer, because I think it's a major miss by a lot of individuals. And I always put myself in this column because I learned that the hard way as well. When I'm going out there, it's easy to run and gun and just throw rates against the wall, as opposed to looking at it from this rolling 12-month cycle where, right now, if we're looking at it, it's been fairly stable outside of this spike where, it's went up about $300 over since May. And I look at it about like a 90-day cycle, Chris. When I'm assessing a lane, I'm like, what did the last 90 days perform? Is there any major events coming up, i.e. 4th of July, holidays, something like that, where you could see a spike? And those are those times from my perspective, you got to weather that storm, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm gonna eat a little bit on this one because I know when that eventually cools back down, my margin's going to stabilize.
Yep, and that inverse approach you were talking about, that's pretty insightful, and that's something I do quite frequently for inbound Florida, being able to explain to different customers, hey, this is why the rate might be this going into Florida, even if it's maybe less miles than a different lane I quoted earlier, and the price going into Florida is way higher. Well, hey, let's flip it and say, well, coming back out of Florida is much cheaper. People are just looking to get out, so to kind of get them to go in, the price point's going to go up. So that inverse approach makes a ton of sense. And that's you kind of taking that next step from just a broker setting in a price to, hey, I want to help educate my customer on why the market is doing this or why this lane might perform in this sort of way, because to be more of that strategic partner.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. So that's going to wrap up this segment, you guys, about This Week in Freight. We're going to continue this pricing and quoting conversation here. But again, if you guys want your lane broken down on the show, email my team, podcast@thefreightcoach.com, and we'll break it down here live on the show. I just need shipping city, delivery city, and trailer type, and we'll make it happen for you. But so, dude, let's talk about that a little bit further, because I think like when I look at a lot of the data that's out there, Chris, it's very misleading and it's very subjective at times, because it's like if you're looking at a national average for a rate per mile for any of the big three modes that are out there, or tender rejections and stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, that it's valuable and I'm not going to discredit it, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And I think a lot of people underbid or overbid based on what the data is on a national level.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I've spent my 8 years strictly on the brokerage side. So coming in it from that perspective is, if you're just sticking with data that these load boards or other sources are showing you, you're probably going to whiff here and there in some quotes, whether it's overpricing or underpricing, because if you don't truly understand your carrier capacity in specific regions or specific lanes, you're at such a disadvantage, right? So for example, right, if you mainly run solo dry vans on a specific lane, and your customer says, hey, actually, I'm going to need a team on this one. If you don't really understand what that team aspect is going to bring, and you're like, okay, I'll just do a flat markup on it because I'm sure I can cover it this way. And then, hey, it turns out you're $1,000 short and you have to make that decision to give the load back or just service it at $1,000 loser. That's a big deal, right? So I think that carrier capacity aspect coming in is huge, utilizing that along with the market data that you see, because at the end of the day, this data is still going to be valuable and you still have to be able to reference it, but it's not the be all, Bible verse that you gotta look at nonstop.
No, I agree with that, man. So like, what are some of those things that, if you're going out there, I'm a big niche guy from when it comes down to like building a book of business, and I look at it where if you're going to go out there and do anything, like if you're going to look at full truckload, for example, choose like, and if you've never built a book of business before, I think choose one mode and stick with that, right? Whether it's dry van, full truckload, reefer, flatbed, do something and stick with it. Obviously, the more experience you got, you can cast a little bit of a wider net, right? Like if you've ran food, dry food, reefer food, flatbed, cool. Like do your thing. But like if you're starting from scratch, I look at everything as like a repeatable, scalable metric, because when you're going out there, like reps are everything early on. And when, I worked for a large company, I've worked for a startup, and I've been out on my own. The hardest part about business is systems development, and then finding a way to maximize your outputs every single day. What are some of those things that you would give to people who are starting from scratch, or maybe they're starting over, they lost their job, they're going to a new company, or maybe they're starting off as an agent? What are some of those things?
Yeah, kind of you touched on a little bit already, and I would say that really having kind of your bread and butter service, your bread and butter mode is huge. I think having the approach of just trying to go out and solve all the problems, sell all the solutions. I don't necessarily believe personally that that's a big strategy for success. And I think something that you'll be able to relate to, especially on, building up your brokerage, there's always going to be a level of figure it outness. Like, hey, you're just going to have to figure it out, right? There is a specific point where just straight up working harder or just straight up spending more time on something does provide results and does move your business forward. I've seen and talked to a lot of brokerage leaders that have all reached a specific point where just working harder no longer gives you that ROI or helps you reach that next step in terms of revenue or margin or volume, right, to be able to scale a business. So I think once you kind of find that level where, hey, spending more time or working harder doesn't actually move the business forward anymore, that's really where you're gonna need to start diving into the hows, right? Your standard operating procedures, going about pricing different customers, how you go about vetting and onboarding specific carriers for specific customers, right? Are you truly taking the approach of, hey, I'm going to bring capacity to a customer, or I'm just going to go out and continue to get opportunities and hope I can find carriers to match up with those opportunities, right? There's two ways to look at it. So once you kind of reach that level of, hey, working harder isn't a solution anymore, that's when you're going to need to start diving into those details, because there is some truth to just working harder will give you results up to a certain point. Like that's a fact. And I'm sure you've seen it multiple times with, hey, if I just work a little bit harder, I will be able to get a little bit more in terms of volume, a little bit more in terms of revenue and margin, but that can't necessarily go on forever if your idea is to scale up a business.
Yeah, I think an overly simplistic response is you have to work hard and smart. Like there is, I think that the internet does such a disservice to most folks when they want to go out on their own and start from scratch when you've never been out on your own, right? Like I think who you take advice from is so key early on, where it's, I see so much theory out there, right? And a lot of people have a lot of great ideas when they're collecting a salary every couple of weeks, getting direct deposited. But your mindset shifts, man, when the money stops coming in, right? Like you got to move at a different pace. And if you think that just working hard is going to get you results forever, I mean, it does to a certain point, but like you got to work hard and you have to work smart. And the sooner you can get down to building an effective system, because like at some point your feelings don't matter, right? Like I don't want to work 90% of the time, Chris. Like I want to sit it. I don't want to do shit, right? Like I'm inherently a lazy person, but you develop a system that you can follow to keep moving the needle forward. And I think early on when you're building something, it takes so much effort. Like this is why most people don't tell you about the beginning phases of starting over and building something from scratch. You can't sell it. You cannot sell that you are going to make so many mistakes early on. You're not going to know what to do 99% of the time. And that level of figuring it out is 100% of your day. Like 100% of the time you have to possess a level of, you just have to figure it out. And you can't sell that. You can't sell the uncertainty. You can't sell the fact that there's a lot that could go wrong. And it doesn't matter how positive you think, the odds are stacked against you. And you have to get to that point where you're working smart and hard as soon as possible.
Yep. And you've started to post about it. I've seen the unsexy side of trying to run a business and grow a business, right? Again, yes, there is going to be a period of time where it's just all about working harder and all about just putting in more time and more effort. But you will reach a ceiling if your goal is to continue to scale, where you have to understand the whys and the hows. And if you're bringing in, if you're trying to create a team, right? Hey, not just I need a person in a seat, but then there's that added responsibility of being able to develop that teammate, right? As a leader, right? And have you read Extreme Ownership by Jocko?
Dude, it's one of my favorite books.
One of the things in there that I think is awesome, but it's also much easier said than done, is as a leader, right? Are you willing to accept zero of the credit because that goes to your team, but also all of the blame when something goes wrong because you were the one who put individuals in this scenario with this ability to succeed and things like that, right? So if you're someone who's being able to build a team, or you have a team under you at this point, right? Are you willing to accept none of the credit and all of the blame, right? That's a tough question for people to answer, right? So just going about, hey, to be able to take that next step and think smarter and grow beyond yourself and add people onto the business, right? Are you going to be willing to be that leader as well?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, Chris, where, like and that's, I think, another thing too, is the problems never stop. Like that's another thing that you sign up for is like there's going to be problems. They're going to continuously be problems. And that's why it's like, again, back to my earlier point about who you take advice from is so important, right? Because it's like, it's easy to give advice on something when you're not getting the full exposure, right? When it's like when you're an employee inside of a system, for example. And again, there's nothing wrong with being an employee. There's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur and taking that approach. But it becomes a problem when you're giving people business advice who are out there doing it, where it's like you only see such a certain silo of the business, right? Like if I was just a sales rep right now, dude, my life would be so much easier, right? Because I don't have to worry about maxing out credit. I don't have to worry about business credit. I don't have to worry about insurance. I don't have to worry about shit failing. I just got to go out there and run and gun, right? So it's like you're not seeing the whole perspective. And, you know, it's like, and that's why I'm doing that unsexy side of business stuff that doesn't get a lot of traction out there, because like, I just want people to be prepared. It's like, dude, if you want to go do it, go do it. I'm going to be the first person to push anybody to go out on their own if that's what they want to do, as long as you're aware of what you're getting yourself into. Because it's very easy to think about how glamorous something's going to be when you're not in the shit. You know what I mean?
Yep. And to your point earlier about making sure you're trusting the right people, wanted to give a quick shout out to a recent guest of yours, Robert Bain, strongest man in logistics. He's the one that told me to read Extreme Ownership. So shout out Bain. He's a good one.
He's the shit, man. I love Robert. So dude, from an operations standpoint, you know, like obviously we're in the middle of, I mean, what I'm seeing right now, I've been down this road before in the market. Nothing I'm seeing is an anomaly or anything like that. But what are some of those operational best practices out there, Chris, that you think a lot of people they might not be aware of, right? Like, what are some of those things that you found success with over your career?
Yeah, I would say, especially right now with, you know, we were in that freight recession for a handful of years, which the theme was how cheap can you go, right? And now all of a sudden with the market shifting, there's never been a bigger spotlight on carrier vetting, carrier compliance. Fuel rates went through the roof and pricing completely shifted from a carrier standpoint, right? One of the things that I've seen kind of a trend of when it comes to carrier capacity, right, is, you know, step one is having a carrier that you would know and trust for a load that you have, like a live load right now. That next step, which is a big step to take, and it takes a lot of work and there's no immediate results, is being able to maintain and grow relationships when you do not have that freight in your back pocket, saying, hey, I need to go out and I need to grow capacity in a certain region or a certain lane, even though I don't have a specific load available for you today, because that's that overtime effort that's going to pay off when you have this consistent lane, when you have this consistent volume, when you need someone to bail you out of a jam, when a customer comes to you at 5 p.m. on a Friday saying, hey, someone else dropped the ball, can you bail me out? You say, I got 3 carriers that I can call right now. One of them is going to come pick it up, right? Taking that next step beyond a live load when it comes to carrier capacity is a big deal in the brokerage space. And again, there's not going to be any immediate results. It's going to be an overtime deal of constantly working to groom and grow your network. And that step two is incredibly critical, especially right now when rates, again, it was a race to the bottom for years. Now all of a sudden price is up. You need to be able to still deliver for your customers because they're expecting you to, especially on the customer side. If the salesperson saying, hey, we're raising our rates to match current trends, the customer says, okay, I still expect that same delivery and maybe even a little bit better because the pricing has changed.
Why do you think brokers get offended when carriers quote them $1,000 over what they posted?
That's an excellent question.
And I'm saying that from that, like, I wasn't trying to corner you here or anything, Chris, but it's like, I laugh every time I scroll through LinkedIn and I hear and see brokers complaining, I can't believe this carrier quoted this, when I know beyond a reasonable doubt they were posting shit for $1 a mile back when things were different, right? With a straight face and said, take it or leave it. That's the market, right? Like I've never understood that. And I used to get pissed off at that stuff too, right? Back in the day. But like, I actually, over these last couple of years being out on my own, I'm like, dude, I don't control the market. My job is freight. To me, freight brokerage is very simple, right? Pick up at point A, deliver to point B. That's as complex as we really need to make it. I know a lot of people want to make this more complex and be like, oh, you need X, Y, and Z. Now, when you strip it all away, I work with some very big shippers, all right? I'm very fortunate. They don't give a shit about anything but their truck showing up on Tuesday when they tendered the load to pick on Tuesday and delivered on Wednesday. Like when you strip it all away, man, that's all that they care about. Again, like we make it more complicated than we need to, where it's like a lot of our customers, when things started to shift, right? Like I got ahead of it. I had those conversations. I'm like, you guys, this is what's going to happen here. with fuel. From a regulatory standpoint, this could potentially affect your market. These states in particular are going to be very, very hard with CDL enforcement, non-domiciled. I'm like, you're going to hear 200,000. It's going to sound like a lot, but in an overall sample pool of drivers, there's like 3.5 million CDL holders that are out there. So like we're talking about like around 1% of the drivers on the road. Is there going to be a potential effect? Yes, but I'm here to insulate you from that, right? Like as a broker, it is our literal job to insulate our customers from drops in capacity, from drastic like spikes in rates and peaks and valleys and all of that stuff. And I don't know if enough people see that.
Yeah, and I'll touch on two things, right? Back to your initial question, I do see those same posts as well from the broker and from the carrier side, and I get a little chuckle out of it as well, because no one's forcing you to book a load with a specific carrier, book a load with a specific broker, right? So it's not like if I offer a lane at $2,000 and you come in at $3,000 as a carrier, no one's forcing either side to book that shipment, right? In logistics, right, you can count on things going wrong with this, a lot of different parties involved. A lot of things can happen, whether it's with production at a shipper. The phrase acts of God with weather, especially in the winter up here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, as you know, right? So no one's forcing each other's hands to book a shipment at a specific rate, right? You always want to say, hey, I'm not going for the closest carrier, the cheapest carrier. I'm going for the right carrier for this specific shipment, right? And then kind of expanding on that when it comes to rates in general, and again, going back to the freight recession for a couple of years, I'm a believer that when rates are up, everybody's winning, right? That's better for everyone in general when rates are up a little bit. I'm not saying that just charge whatever you want, whether you're a carrier to a broker or a broker to a customer. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. But I do think there was a little bit of a correlation from rates being so low for so long and quality of carrier just in general, quality of carrier out on the road. And that's led into such a massive discussion now, especially with the Supreme Court ruling about carrier scores, how you vet, with brokers now saying, hey, brokers are going to be held liable, right? So when rates are a little bit up, I think everybody's winning a little bit more. But again, no one's forcing your hand one way or the other to book that truck or work with that broker. So if you're going to take it personally and complain about it, it doesn't really make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, because I look at a lot of things now in a very black and white way. And it's always easier said than done in a controlled environment, Chris, where I'm like, how is this moving my business forward? How is this benefiting my objectives and my goals out there? And I have just found that more often than not, it's not. It has actually nothing to do with it. And it's actually taking time away from you doing what you're supposed to do out there. And, it's like if we're looking at a lot of these things where it's like, we're talking about the Supreme Court case, I can't control that, right? Like I can't control that ruling that came down. Do I agree with it? No, of course I don't agree with it. Because like my stance is like, I just find it ironic that the governing agency that is supposed to supply all this information is like punishing the people for making the choices based on the information they're providing, right? Like, again, I'm not blaming anybody, but it's one of those things where I'm like, all right, I can't control that. Just like I can't control what the market is. I can only control my efforts, my outputs. I can only control how do I learn from a lot of these situations that I'm going to come across here. And then again, bring a better product or service out there to my customer. And I spent a lot of my life worrying about the wrong shit. I did, I thought that there was something else out there, but at the end of the day, man, it is as simple as like, how are you going to continuously improve inside of your operations to put a better product out there? Because just like there's a million freight brokers, there's a million real estate agents, there's a million of everybody, right? Like everything in this great country is highly competitive. It does not matter.
Yep, 100%. If you're not able to consistently deliver, they say this phrase in sports a lot, but it's definitely applicable to business. The "what have you done for me lately?" So you're just kind of spot on with what you're saying in terms of your ability to consistently deliver for your customer and understand exactly what's going on best for their operation. And part of that, like you mentioned, you have to continuously improve as an individual and as part of a team. If you're part of a team versus just being a solo entrepreneur, right? So being able to continuously improve as an individual and within your business, within your organization, is crucial for the long term, right? Again, if you're seeing a trend, right? A lot of this stuff, there's not going to be any immediate results, right? It's a lot of dedication. You know what, you've talked about your fitness journey a couple of times on this show, right? That's very applicable to business, right? Where you're not going to get those quick wins nonstop. It's a lot of overtime building for those lasting long-term results.
Dude, there's so many synergies out there between building a business, staying in shape, all of that stuff. And it is, man, it's hard, but that we'll save that for another conversation, Chris. But I as we're kind of wrapping up the show here, man, how are you seeing things right now for the remainder of this year in regards to the market? What advice would you give to individuals on how to better prepare to provide a better product or service to their customers for the remainder of this year?
In terms of kind of outlook for the rest of the year and even into next year, right? I know a lot of people kind of look at July 4th as a turning point market-wise and demand-wise, right? So kind of looking into the next, over the remainder of the year, right? I would say, where I see a lot of potential gaps within organizations is how well do your operators and your carrier sales team truly understand the sales initiatives and what you're trying to accomplish from a customer success standpoint, and how well does your sales team truly understand your ability to deliver, right? A lot of the experience I've had over the last 8 years is kind of looking at, okay, what does this sales opportunity look like when it actually reaches the floor? What does it look like live, right? So that disconnect is where a lot of problems can happen in terms of service, in terms of profitability from an account standpoint versus how you price, things like that. So that connection from sales to ops or from sales team to the carrier sales floor, that's crucial, right? Especially with rates being elevated, and it looks like they're going to stay elevated. I don't think anything's going to continue to blow crazy, right? But I would say that connection right there is crucial, right? From being able to really look at a customer profitability standpoint. Hey, I budgeted this out to really be able to hit it. I need to know, what am I selling? What am I pricing? And my actual ability to deliver on that from a carrier sales standpoint.
Yeah, it's, again, I think that no matter what, you have to approach a lot of this, and especially if you've never seen this before, you have to approach it on a day-by-day basis, because, we move a lot of consistent lanes that are out there, and, you can tell when our regulars are available and when they're not on how a market can fluctuate overnight, right? And I think it is one of those things that this is the time, and I've been literally saying this for 6 years on this show, you need to develop a core carrier base. Like, you have to develop a core carrier base. They are out there. It is not easy. Just like finding customers you can grow and scale with is not an easy thing to do, but they are out there. And once you find them, you have to take care of that. You have to treat, I think the most overused and underutilized word in this industry is relationships. Everybody wants to say this is a relationship industry. Ironically, only when it's convenient for the individual saying it, right? Like it's never well, no, I got to take care of my carriers now because they took care of me back then, right? Like, a lot of our core carriers, they're below market right now, like by a lot. And they know they are below market by a lot. But like they have all said, they're like, I know exactly what we get with you. When we show up to your customers, they load us quick, they unload us quick, and you guys pay us quick. They're like, I could go out there and make more money, but I don't know what I'm getting in that situation. So they're like, we're going to continue. But they're like, you're paying us fair. You're paying us with a very healthy margin on their end as well. So it is that point, right? Like, there is that balance out there that you can find. It's just hard, man. And again, if any one of my core carriers like, hey, Chris, I found this opportunity, run with it, man. It's a free market, dude. Make all the money you can make. I'm going to be here when you need us, because like at the end of the day, man, I know what I get with you and I'm going to pay you.
Yep. Big fan of capitalism, big fan of a free market, and big fan about caring about your carriers and your driver's experience. You're not the one dispatching them. You're not the one showing up to talk to them when they're at a mechanical shop or in their yard, right? From a brokerage perspective, right? So, but still needing to care about that driver experience is huge, because that's how you build upon that consistency in that relationship, which then transfers to your deliverables for your customer.
I love it. Chris, thank you so much for your time today, man. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you got going on?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn's a great way to get a hold of me. I, like everyone else, I get all the spam messages, but I still read every single one. So if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, happy to chat with you. As well as I just launched a personal website not too long ago called sonnekconsulting.com, spelled just like what you're seeing on the screen, SONNEK. Feel free to go check it out and learn a little bit more about what Chris and I have been talking through today.
Perfect. Chris, I appreciate it. That's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you guys can't find Chris out there, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in contact with him. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang. Window down, yelling out money.